in this video, we are going to talk about how to fix a specific category of user fatal messages that you would get with MSC Nastran. Now, any physics solver, it's going to have their own set of error messages, whether it's CFD, FEA, or some other type of physics simulation. That program is always going to have errors. There's one exact path you need to have to get to a successful analysis. If you deviate from that path just a small amount, you will get all these errors. So again, you have to walk a very fine line to get to that successful analysis. If you deviate, you start getting all these errors. Now, I wish I could tell you how to fix every possible error that you might get with any FEA solver. But unfortunately, there's really no exact plan for every error. But I realized this. There are 3 types of errors that you are going to get with Nastran. The first type of error or category is something was not supplied properly in the input file. Maybe you supplied a really odd character here. Here as an example, maybe you added these lines. This will give you an error. You supplied bad data. That's okay. It happens to me all the time. This is the first category. What Nastran does at the beginning, when it's starting to run, it inspects the input file for all these possibly bad inputs that you've provided. If it finds these bad inputs, it terminates before ever starting the statics analysis. So these are going to be errors that happen at the beginning and before the statics analysis or buckling analysis. Maybe we'll call these the formatting issues in the BDF file. The second category are errors that happen during the analysis. So now the statics analysis happens, maybe the buckling analysis happens, and something happens during that analysis, and then it terminates. This is the second type or second category of errors. One very common one is the user fatal message 9050 or UFM, an acronym for user fatal message, UFM 10030. I think this is the newer version of this one. Or it could be some other user fatal message. For category 1, fortunately, there is a procedure to fixing those types of errors. So I'll walk you through how to fix those types of errors. For the second category, unfortunately, there's no exact process to fix those errors. So I'll still teach you how to interpret the errors, but it's really a trial and error approach to fixing these types of errors. Now, one recommendation I have to suggest, if you have access to MSC Nastran technical support, reach out to them. They are there to help you. Just in case you don't have access to their technical support, contact me. I'll leave it here. Use it as a last option. If you've exhausted all other options, if you already spent hours or days trying to fix that error, again, reach out to technical support or use me as a last option. Here's my email address. And then for the third category, there are hundreds and thousands of categories, or there are hundreds and thousands of errors that you could get. There's really no finite number of categories you can use. So I've just used a category 3 to lump every other user fatal message there. One example might be when you don't have enough memory on your workstation, you try and run Nastran, and then I believe you get a user fatal message or a different error called system fatal message. So going back to number 1. Number 1's the first and only category that I'll be focusing on. Again, number 2, those are more difficult to figure out. But I think if you know how to fix number 1, this is going to help you at least start trying to figure out how to fix the second category of errors. Now, again, in the first category, this often happens when bad data was supplied in the input file. This is very common if you're hand editing the input files. So here is an example. The MAT1 entry, I purposely made a mistake here. I gave it a negative Young's modulus. That doesn't exist as far as I know. So here, what's the fix here? That's easy. Just delete the negative sign. Here for the force entry, for the force load, I supplied a exclamation mark when I should have really supplied a of actual value with the decimal point. Now, also what happens very often when you're hand editing these entries, when you're typing values here, you actually move the other values as you type. So notice how I've accidentally moved these values to other fields, if you will. There are a lot of issues you can get as you modify the bulk data file. So let me show you one approach that I have to fixing these errors. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's go back to the state where we had the errors. Let's go ahead and run Nastran here. So here we ran Nastran and we get this F06 file. This F06 file, if there are errors, they are going to be contained in this file or the log file. Very commonly, they're here in the F06 file. So what we do here, one recommendation I give to new Nastran users, always look in the F06 file for any user fatal messages. So here I searched for user fatal message, and we have some user fatal messages here. We have 4 actually, or 5, but these next user fatal messages, they are because of these 2. So we'll focus on these 2 first. Whenever you have a user fatal message, read the next 1 to 5 lines. The following lines after user fatal message or system fatal message, they would give you a clue as to what the issue is. Here, if we read the next line, it tells us that mat1 with ID 1 near line 51. So let's go ahead and look there. This is line 51. And then we read the next line. E, which is the Young's modulus, which is currently -1 times 10 to the 7, should be greater than 0.0. It's telling us, hey, this value should always be positive. It should always be greater than 0. But hey, if we realize, oh, I supplied a negative sign when it should be positive. And then we're done with that user fatal message. If we run Nastran, it should have fixed it. Here we look at the next fatal message. Force with ID 300, G equals 4, S key equals 0. And this is what makes it hard to interpret these messages. We don't know what G equals 4. I believe that's the grid ID actually. Oh, right. So it is grid ID. And then here we get this other value. S key equals 0. I have no idea what S key is. But fortunately, it tells us, look at line 53. Okay, this is line 53. So the error is somewhere here. Here it tells us that the force value, which is currently an exclamation mark, it should be a real value. So the exclamation mark, illegal value, it should be a real value. So what do we do here? We say, okay, here, I need to delete that. And then you want to make sure you preserve the spacing and location of the next values. I changed it to 20,000. So we save this and we run Nastran again. It should fix those errors. So that gives you an idea of how to fix the user fatal messages. Now, that process is helpful with the second category of errors. You read the errors. You find the errors, first of all. So you search for user fatal message. It gives you the results. And then you go line by line and try to decrypt and decipher what the meaning of these lines are. I wish it was this easy to interpret the errors, but unfortunately it's not. So it takes time to interpret and to decide what the change or the modification should be to the text file. Now, again, reach out to technical support if they are an option. If you end up spending hours or days, if technical support is still not, or rather, if technical support is not available to you, then contact me as a last resort. Here I have my email address. Now, there is a new way to solve these errors. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to start with this input file that has these errors. I'm going to import it to the Sol200 web app. Now, just in case you want to use the Sol200 web app, you can visit theengineeringlab.com. And here at the top, there is a free trial of the pre-post web app. You can go ahead and get a free trial of this tool. We've imported this bulk data file. And then let's go ahead and try and run this with Nastran. Now we're running with Nastran, and we get an error. Here we get a red icon here, UFM, SFM, user fatal message detected in the log or F06 file. Here on the right, we get an output of that F06 file. The same user fatal messages that we discussed a moment ago, they're listed here. Same thing. The force entry has a bad value. The MAT1 entry has a negative Young's modulus. So what do we do here in the web app? That's okay. What we do is we go to that force entry, and then we look for that ID, which would be this ID, 300, and we look at field F. So we scroll to the right. Oh, we look field F, and we ask ourselves, what is field F? We turn on the descriptions, and it's a scale factor. It should be a real type, like you see here. And right now, we look at this and we realize, hey, this is an exclamation mark. It should actually be 20,000. So we give it 20,000. And you have a few options here. You could either click run here, upload PDF and immediately run, or you can click this inspect button here at the top right hand corner. We click inspect. This is going to run Nastran and inspect the input file. And here we still get a user fatal message, but notice what happened here. That error with the force entry, it's no longer there. We fixed that error. And now we get the second or the next error message, which is regarding the MAT1 entry. So let's navigate to the MAT1 entry. And here we know that it's the Young's modulus that's giving us the issue. So we'll go ahead and modify that. Oh, and one thing here. Here's the MAT1 entry on the right. Whenever you make modifications here, the corresponding bulk data entry is immediately updated. So here before, we had a negative Young's modulus here in field 3, but we corrected it to be positive. So now once we make that modification, we click inspect. And remember, we're only talking about the first category of UFMs. We're not talking about the second category, which are more difficult to solve. So here, after we clicked inspect, it completed the run. So we'll do that again. It completed the run and it reported no error messages. So notice that there are no errors. That's good for us. This is indication that we've addressed the category 1 UFMs. We go to download, and now let's click on upload and run Nastran. So now we're going to try and run that statics analysis. Here, we get a complete with no errors. So if we go to the results files and the F06 file, let's go and look through this file. Great. So I get displacement results, force results, and stress results. Here, if you wanted to, just to be sure, look for user fatal message. There are no user fatal messages. We've addressed the category 1 messages. So here, let me do one thing here. Let me see if this will work for this demo. All right, let's see if this works. Okay, so let's try and inspect this. Or let's just try and run Nastran. I removed all the constraints from the model. So this is going to trigger a second category called a user fatal message 10,030, I believe. Oh, what's going on here? Grid point 1 has an illegal component 0 reference on SPC1. Right, so let's try and fix this second category of UFM. It's saying that grid point 1 has an illegal component 0 or blank reference on SPC1 entry with ID 1. So here, we identified where the user fatal message is. We are reading the first 1 or 5 lines. We're reading that line. It's telling us that there's an issue with SPC1 ID 1. So let's go back to the bulk data entry. SPC 100, which is here. It's telling us that the component has an illegal component or it's blank. And that's what we did. Before we had all the components selected, but then we selected the blank option. So that's what's giving us a problem. So here, let's go ahead and select all 6 components. Let's go and try and rerun this. And we'll wait a moment. And we're done. Now if we go to the results files and look at the F06, I get displacements and forces and stresses. So there we fix the second category of UFM. Here I made it look easy, but in actuality, in reality, it's not. It's actually quite difficult. But I think at this point you kind of have an idea of how to fix these UFMs. You first find the lines that have user fatal message in the F06 file, and now you start reading the lines carefully. Those lines are going to give you clues as to what the error is. And then you go ahead and you manually modify the data here, or you use the web app to fix the data and rerun the analysis with the goal of successfully getting results at the end. So there you have it. That is how you approach fixing these user fatal messages. This video was targeting the first category of UFMs. If there's bad data in the input file, those are relatively easy to solve. But here there's a second category on the errors that happen during the analysis. Those are much more difficult to solve, but you know what the process is like. Find the user fatal message, start reading the lines because they have the clues that you need to figure out the error. If you take more than 30 minutes or an hour to fix the problem, I typically recommend reach out to technical support if they are available to you. If they're not, remember there are the manuals, there are the examples. But if you exhaust all the other options, if you need an option of last resort, I'll leave my email address here. Definitely reach out. And then the third category, this is every other UFM out there. There really is no way to categorize every other UFM, so I lump them into category 3. So that's how you approach fixing user fatal messages in MSC Nastran. And as always, thank you for watching.